Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove Live with the Mets Roundtable crew. We got the whole crew here tonight to go over some hot stove news, and it's starting to heat up. We're in that preheat mode. The fire is burning, and it's starting to get hot going into December end of winter meetings. Before we get started talking about the main topic of the day, and we know who that player is, let's say what up to everybody on the roundtable. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
What up, what up? I appreciate you, Rob. Always good to be back on the roundtable. Appreciate everybody in the chat. John's tuning in, I see in the comment section. Drop those comments. We'll get it answered for you. Got a lot to talk about, a lot of reports, but like you're saying, a lot of speculation still. So it's getting warm, but not hot just yet. So I appreciate it. Like I said, subscribe to the channel. CP New York Sports just dropped a video today about the starting pitching free agent market. Almost at 200 subscribers, so I appreciate the support. But let's talk some baseball. Very ready for it.
Absolutely. Nelson, still in that snow?
Yeah, still coming down out there. It's freaking cold out. Winter has arrived apparently a little early, but around here it's to be expected. Good to be on here with you fellas. Good to talk some baseball, and appreciate everybody watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, if you could do that, I appreciate that too. And let's have some fun.
Absolutely. And Hayden popped on. Got a few minutes with us. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, what's going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden. Yeah, originally wasn't supposed to be on today, but had a little bit of time in my schedule, so hopefully I'll be on for the full episode. If I pop out, I do apologize. I have a couple things I needed to take care of, but Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Hopefully everyone is doing extremely well. Yeah, Mets Talk with Hayden. You guys know me. I did a video this past week. Did very well. If you guys want to check that out, it was 5 things the Mets should do this offseason. Did extremely well, so I do appreciate you guys for that. And, yeah, super excited to be here. Let's go Mets. Let's go baseball. And offseason is here.
Absolutely. So you guys know what to do. Hit on that subscribe button to all the channels where you got a lot of news to talk about. And we're going to start with topic number 1, and that is Juan Soto. Rumors have been, and listen, a week ago, it was mostly a pipe dream that the Mets would have been even in on Juan Soto, because we didn't think so. We thought maybe Ohtani, definitely Yamamoto, maybe, definitely Montgomery, maybe a trade for a top-line starting pitcher. And guess what? Now we're in on Juan Soto. Apparently, there's 3 teams that are the favorite for Juan Soto: the Giants, the Yankees, and the Mets. And if your favorite reporter, Andy Martino, and you listen to him, the Yankees are getting all 3. So, unfortunately for Andy Martino, the Yankee shill, he's probably very wrong. And the Mets are still in talks with the Padres. So that tells me that apparently the Mets actually have what they want. All we heard, and Chris, I'm going to start with you about the Soto situation. All we heard, the Padres want pitching. And if that's the case, the Mets are somewhat out on them talks, but clearly, if it was only about pitching, they've been talking to the Giants and the Yankees alone, because they have more top 10 pitching prospects and probably closer to the majors than the Mets. But in your opinion, why are the Mets still in these trade talks? Is it the Mets offering a bigger package, or are the Mets actually going to take some payroll relief as like a bad contract along with Juan Soto? What do you think, Chris?
First of all, I've been saying it for a long time. My main goal this entire offseason outside of Yamamoto for pitching has been Juan Soto. I firmly do believe, and I tweeted this out, that the Mets are in position to offer the heftiest package for Juan Soto, better than the Yankees and better what the Giants can give. I do think that it can get done. Now, when you're talking about a 1-4, however many prospects / MLB ready players the Mets are going to give up, that's an interesting conversation. The Mets don't have as much MLB ready pitching as you said, but if the Padres are still talking to the Mets, that's probably not all the Padres want. In order to get the Juan Soto deal done, you have to offer a package of, at first, it's going to take either Acuna or Gilbert, one of those guys. And then you're looking at a guy like probably Parada. And then you can offer up Mike Vassell, Blade Tidwell, who I do think has a lot more value than people realize. I've been high on Blade Tidwell for a while now. I know a lot of people aren't as much. He still's got a lot to prove, but I like Blade Tidwell a lot. You can still offer up Christian Scott. I understand that he's also an up-and-comer as well. I saw your video today, Justin Jarvis. So in terms of pitching, the Mets, it's not like the Mets have no pitching to offer up. The Padres have 2 top 100 prospects in their farm system in the MLB pipeline. I'm not talking about top 15, top 20 in the Padres organization. I'm talking about MLB top 100 pitchers coming up for them. I understand that they're going to want pitching, but when I hear these takes saying, oh, the Mets don't have the pitching of what the Padres want, they don't have this, they don't have that, I think the Mets are in a lot better of a spot to get Juan Soto than a lot of people realize. You can even throw Alex Ramirez on top of those conversations, the Mets number 11 prospect. I saw you also put that in there as well. So a Juan Soto trade can get done. He has been, for numerous weeks now, a talking point of mine that I firmly do believe if Juan Soto comes to Queens in orange and blue, he offers Pete Alonso a level of protection in the lineup that he has never had in his career thus far, and he puts the Mets over the top. And at this point, you get Juan Soto in the lineup. I don't really care who you fill in down below. Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Juan Soto in the middle of your lineup is deadly. Go sign Yamamoto. Those 2 guys for the offseason is a win in my book. Go ahead and do it. If the Padres are willing to listen, I understand the Yankees are front runners on that. Martino, man, we're going to talk about Martino a lot. I'm sure here. He's got plenty of articles, plenty of Yankees rhetoric to spew. But no doubt in my mind that Stearns is working the phones with the Padres, seeing what they want for Juan Soto, and I think that it can get done. There's a lot of different avenues for Stearns to approach the situation with.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree, Chris. And, if you haven't checked out my video with the packages, I'll go over it a little bit once we get through the rest of the guys and their opinions. But, yeah, I agree, Chris, 100%. So, Nelson, what do you think about the whole situation with how the Mets, were they always in on Juan Soto and we just hearing about it now since they like to keep a tight lip? Or do you think that they saw an opening and they went to go get it? What do you think?
I mean, I don't know. I find these rumors hard to take seriously. I just, everybody has something different to say. Everybody's looking for clicks. Are we really that close to trading for Soto? I have no idea. Great if we are. I just don't know who to believe anymore. I don't even know, like, the main rumor. I think Hector Gomez was the one saying that we were in on him. That guy is like basically the Carlos Baerga of Twitter. I just don't. He's not wrong all the time, but he says a lot of stuff that just doesn't come true. So while I hope he's right, I have no idea. I think the Mets could make a significant package to give the Padres, and they could probably swing a deal. The problem is the Mets do have pitching, but it's not a ton. So if you trade away Vassell, Scott, Tidwell, what have you, then you're putting yourself in a hole all over again because you don't have much left. So that's my only concern with if the Padres truly want pitching and they want multiple pitching prospects, and that's an issue. Then again, if you're getting Juan Soto, I mean, you could argue who cares. I'm just saying, I mean, it's something that Stearns probably has to think about in that case. It's like, we tried so hard to build up the farm system. Do we really want to take 2 steps back? And there's the whole I mean, we have to be sure that Soto's going to sign a contract, because if he's not and we give up these pieces, that's not a good idea. So, and I would assume that they're doing their due diligence and talking behind the scenes, even though it's not technically allowed. These guys talk, so I'm sure. Is Boris his agent? I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. I'm sure they're having conversations, and he's letting it be known whether or not he's legit considering like signing an extension with whoever the team may be. So we'll see. I mean, I'd love to have Juan Soto on his team. Obviously, we're in on other dudes, and there's a lot going on. And I'm sure behind the scenes, there's a ton heading into the winter meetings here coming up. I think they start Sunday or Monday. So it's going to be a lot to think about, a lot going on. I know there's tons of Met fans that are frustrated that we haven't done anything yet, but just be patient. It's coming. Time will tell. We'll see what happens. But yeah, man, I'm all in for Soto's the guy that you can't like hold back and nitpick about prospects with Juan Soto. Like, he's a legit guy that you go all in out for a guy like that.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I was just going to bring that up. Juan Soto isn't a 31-year-old soon-to-be free agent like Aaron Judge, like Alonso, who's going to be at 29, 30 when he's a free agent. He's 25 years old and not going to be 26 until the end of the 2024 season in October. So you give up what you need to give up, and to be, prospect hugging for a guy like Juan Soto, you pray that one of your top prospects turn out to be even half of Juan Soto. And I think that's important to realize in this situation. Like I said, I put up 2 trade packages earlier today in the video, and I was fluid on all of them. If they says, okay, that's not enough, okay, what else do you want? Besides Alvarez, I'm on board to giving up whatever you think that would take. If it needs another prospect, do I want to give up Jet Williams? No. But if it takes that, I'm not going to stop, giving Jet Williams and saying, oh, well, I don't want Juan Soto because I care about Jet Williams. How does, Brian Cashman feel when he didn't want to trade Volpe when he was trying to get Luis Castillo? That would have got the deal done. Who knows what the Yankees would have done in the playoffs that year, right? And then it went to Seattle. So I think the Mets missed out on too many of these situations where they're afraid to give up a prospect because of, PCA for Javi Baez. You can't worry about that. That was a stupid trade at the time. But again, Javi Baez is nowhere near the player Juan Soto is. And the age is different too. And, on top of that, PCA and where we are in 2021, we weren't a great team at the time. We weren't really a good team. I think this team is prime and ready with these core guys to do what we need to do. And putting Juan Soto there can only make us better, especially at 25 years old. So, Hayden, what's your opinion on this? We know about Hector Gomez, that he's mostly wrong. He's like, Bob Nightingale, he's like Andy Martino. But I see it as this. It's possible. We all know that because the Mets have the prospects if they're willing to do it. But I do want to say something before I get your opinion. David Stearns has no connection to any of these prospects at all. He didn't draft any of them. He didn't trade for any of them. I mean, you could say Clifford and Gilbert was talked about in Acuna with Stearns, but that is yet to be determined. So I think Stearns, and he made a big trade with Yelich when he became the GM of the Brewers. He likes to make that big trade. So we'll see how that goes. Hayden, what do you think about this Soto rumor?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that point up. So, when it comes down to the Juan Soto trade, you look at it 2 ways. I mean, Nelson said it, and I agree with it. You're taking a step forward, but then you also take 2 steps backwards. And that's mainly in regards to pitching that you would potentially give up. The Mets have worked very hard to build the farm system they have. Obviously, yes, they did it for the future. Obviously, everyone was upset that the Mets got rid of Verlander and Scherzer at last year's deadline and some other pieces, but that was in correlation to, a better, future for this upcoming offseason. So they could be involved in, trade packages for, some of the best players in MLB, like your Juan Sotos and whoever else is out there. The pitching would be a little interesting to see what you would give up, especially if it's a pitching prospect or pitching in general. We know that you guys said the Padres would want pitching in return. And I think that'd be interesting considering the Mets aren't really in the best spot to be, getting rid of them. But I mean, unfortunately, I think there's other ways the Mets can go about it. Obviously, like Rob said, Stearns has no connection to these guys. So he has no sympathy. He has no relationship to any of these prospects. He didn't draft any of them. None of these are his guys. They're all Epler guys. And I mean, yeah, really, all these guys are Billy Epler guys because they've really only been in the system for the last 2 years, essentially. So, I mean, when it comes down to Juan Soto, I don't need to explain why he's good. I mean, he's a great OBP guy, great table setter. He'll give you 35 home runs a year, 900 OPS plus. I mean, he's an MVP. He's an MVP caliber player. He's a top 10 player in baseball that you're getting. You would give up your. I heard they didn't want Kevin Parada, but I mean, you would have. I would generally have no issue giving up a Parada, a Jet Williams, a Ryan Clifford, whoever. Obviously, I don't think all three of those guys would be in that exactly, but one of those three or two of those three added on with some other guys. But Juan Soto really would kind of be the cherry on top for this offense, I feel. You look at the Mets, the last, and I like to talk about Steve Cohen a lot. Ever since Cohen took over, the Mets never really got the number one guy. So I think this would be a great opportunity to really get that number one guy that you wanted. The Mets never got Springer. They never got whoever else. Well, this is your opportunity too. And we see the offense is important. They're obviously not bringing back the same lineup as last year. They're going to bring back a mixture of a new lineup, an old lineup, and that's what you need. And I think shuffling Soto into that, great number 2 hitter, great number 3 hitter. I mean, that's damage. It's protection in the lineup, ahead or behind Pete Alonso. You have that protection. And then even for Lindor and, other valuable assets on this lineup. So bringing in Soto, I really think does a lot. My only concern, and Scott Boras is his agent, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a very tricky guy. And we know that he does the, sign and trade type stuff. So I would say right now, as long as you can get a confirmation that once you trade for him, he will resign, then I would feel a little bit more optimistic and positive. Obviously, we know that happened with Lindor and they worked things out, but you would like to have some sort of confirmation that he will extend as soon as he trades, because that'd be the most Mets thing ever. He comes here and he walks. That'd be really bad. But I think Soto would be. A Soto trade any day.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick that I don't think that we're realizing here, especially in the chat? If the Padres, it really comes down to if the Padres want to let him go. Because if you're talking about the Padres waiting to trade Juan Soto at the deadline, they're going to get a fraction of a return than what they would get if they traded him this offseason. So if they think that they're true contenders this year, which, let's face it, with that staff right now, how's it's holding up, I don't think they're contenders. Especially they're not even a top 3 team in the NL if I would have to go for it on paper right now with the way the roster is constructed. That's just my humble opinion. They're going to get a fraction at the trade deadline versus if they trade him now. So I honestly think if I'm the Padres, thinking objectively, not just because we're talking about here in the Mets perspective, I'm trading Juan Soto and getting a haul back. They tried to trade. They traded a haul for him. Didn't work out in his tenure there. You still have the core guys in your lineup. Without Juan Soto in the package that you get in return, you can still build a contender. Yeah. So I just don't understand this trade. Let's wait and see at the deadline where the Padres are at and then trade Juan Soto. You don't do that to a generational guy when you're going to get half the fraction in return. So that's my philosophy on that.
Yeah, I agree. We can continue the conversation. I agree. The Padres are in a rock and a hard place, and we haven't even brought this up, right? Can they afford their payroll? They can't take out another loan. They already, the GM already spoke about it, that, the owners are not willing to take out, the new owners aren't willing to take out another loan, and it's going to be hard for them to do that. Can they even afford to pay their payroll again? That's the other issue too. I think they have to cut payroll. I don't think they have much of a choice in this Soto situation. If they wait, they're still got to pay half his arbitration number, which is, I think his arbitration number for this year is $33 million. So, do the math. They got to pay half that if they trade him at the deadline, and they're going to get less prospects, like you just said, Chris. So, Nelson, let me ask you. Listen, I think it has to be more of the situation where the Padres are between a rock and a hard place here. Honestly, I think it's more about the money than the actual player at this point. in Soto. Yeah, they love to keep Soto, but I don't think they can afford their payroll. Clearly, they couldn't last year. So what seems to think that they're going to do it this year, especially with season tickets down that they already talked about, and they were just as bad as the Mets, and one of the highest payrolls in baseball. So what do you think, Nelson?
Yeah, if the situation over there is as dire as some have reported, then you would think they have to trade someone, whether it be Soto. I don't know if they would attempt to trade Machado instead or Tatis, what have you. I don't know if anybody would want them over a guy like Soto, or the cost would be a lot higher, especially for a Tatis. I have no idea. I haven't paid that much attention to the situation. Just read what we've all read about them taking out the loan and what have you. Also read conflicting reports saying that they don't plan on trading Soto. So who the heck knows? Like we're like I've said before, we're in that silly season where all these writers are writing stories, and a lot of times they're all contradicting each other. It's like you really don't know what's going on. So I don't know. It'll be nice to see some actual movement happen so we can get a sense of what's happening. Like if you see the Padres out here trying to actually sign more players, then you would assume
Correct.
Maybe they're not as bad a situation as we think. If we see them start to sell off other pieces, then maybe they are broke and they need to get rid of everybody they can. So who knows? It's ridiculous, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Hayden, we'll get to you with the same conversation. I was just, I'm one of those people that like to listen to other sports talk radio around the country, especially when the off season comes. Like I was listening to Philadelphia radio right before Aaron Nola got signed. They had no idea that the Phillies were ready to sign Nola. They actually thought the day of when I was listening to sports talk radio in Philadelphia that morning, they thought that Nola was gone, and then that afternoon he was signed by the Phillies. So, it's weird how this offseason is going so far. And I was listening to San Diego ever since the Mets have became, a topic of, interest with Soto. They've been talking about it, and they all believe that Soto is gone. They believe it 100%. All sports radio in San Diego, I mean, at least the one big show there that I was listening to, they think he's gone. They think it's a done deal. They're just trying to find the best package. And to Edgardo's point, in the comments, Padres want pitching, but if they want pitching, again, we just talked about it, the Mets wouldn't be involved because the Padres wouldn't talk to them. They would talk to the Yankees and the Giants. There's a reason why the Mets are in this conversation, and that's because they can put a pretty good package that I don't think the Yankees are willing to go that far. If they're going to beat the Mets package, they're going to have to put Dominguez or Volpe in that package, at least one of them, along with their pitching prospects. And is Cashman going to do that along with giving a $500 million contract to Soto? I hardly doubt that, because if they are going to try to get Yamamoto, that's $750 million between two players. When is the last time the Yankees spent that type of money over the last 5-6 years? They haven't. And I think that's the thing we have to look at as well. The Giants, different story. They seem to be desperate, but there was another report right before we came live that Yamamoto and Ohtani is their priority right now. So if Soto's not necessarily their priority and they're not willing to give up prospects, and the Yankees, who seem to be the favorites from day one of the offseason for Soto, and now the Mets are involved, it seems like the Mets are on top of this situation here, and I think that's why they got involved. And don't count out David Stearns. Like, I think this guy knows exactly what he's doing. And, until he makes the move, I'm not going to give him all the credit in the world, but he seemed like he jumped in at the right moment when things might have not been working out between the Padres, Giants, and Yankees, and he might find an opening, and it might get him Juan Soto. Hayden, what do you really think about this? Like, when it comes to this whole situation, like, do you think it's more of the salary situation and that the Padres probably can't, afford their payroll and they don't have a choice about trading Juan Soto and they can't wait? Or do you just think that they're trading Juan Soto just to get some assets back? What do you think?
Honestly, I think it's somewhat a mixture of both. You look at the San Diego Padres, and a lot of people should be saying, "Well, Padres as well." I mean, everyone always, Mets, highest payroll in baseball. When you look at the Padres, they've been spending 2 years before the Mets. They started spending in 2018, 2019 when they signed Machado to that massive contract. They've been spending much longer. And minus Cupcake 2020, they had the same amount of playoff appearances as the Mets and an equal amount of collapses in 2021. And then, of course, an inadequate 2023. So, right now with the Padres, I think they're in a more rough situation, of course, obviously. Front office wise is interesting. Who's their general manager? I'm blanking on his name.
AJ Preller.
AJ Preller. Yeah, I know they retained him. I believe they brought him back. I may be wrong on that. But right now, and we saw that they took out a loan for $50 million. The Padres took out a loan for $50 million this past season, and that right there kind of says it as it is. The Padres really in a confidence spot right now. They have so many guys locked up. That Fernando Tatis deal, who knows? I genuinely have no idea how that's going to go. He came back. He was all right. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't what everyone talks to him to be. Machado had a down year, unfortunately. That organization isn't looking great. Their owner died. See in the chat that is true. Maybe it's a little Steinbrenner 1.0 blowing it up, but that's besides the point. But right now, Padres, I don't really think they're in the best spot. And honestly, I think it's a mixture of retaining guys that could help them win maybe in the long term, and then it's also the financial situation. Does Soto want to stay? I've seen one report. I forgot who it was. It was on Twitter earlier today when I was getting out of class, but it was saying that there's a possibility that Soto, someone really close to Soto, they believe he has a better chance of re-signing than going to the Yankees. Who knows? But as of right now, you asked me today, I don't see any way that Soto stays with them. And I think it's mutual. I think that front office, that they know that realistically, do they have a shot with Soto long term? Are they going to be competitive next year? Who knows? Maybe the guys they get back in the Soto trade could be valuable assets for them to compete and could kind of, solve a couple other issues down the line. Obviously, they have a lot of issues with pitching. Darvish is getting up there in age. They're probably not going to bring back Blake Snell. Maybe that's why they want pitching prospects. So, maybe that could be a benefit for them. Soto can only do so much. One player can only do so much for an organization. So right now, you ask me, I don't think Soto is going to go back to San Diego. But you never know. Maybe there's a possibility they keep him and then they, can get more for their money's worth at the trade deadline when more teams are more vulnerable, that they are a little bit more desperate, and that those teams that are in possible contention for the playoff race could trade for Soto, and maybe Padres would get more out of that. So, as of right now, I think it's a mixture of the money and the return process.
Yeah,
real quick.
Yep.
The chat made great points. I know you saw it, Rob. MEZ, Padres won't trade Soto in division to the Giants, right? If you're talking about the three players like you're talking about, Rob, the Giants, Mets, and Yankees, that in division trade, like it could happen, but you highly doubt it, right? And then two, Dante was saying, I've been saying this all along. The Padres really don't have the leverage in the contract negotiations. I've been saying this for weeks.
Yeah.
They have very little leverage. I firmly believe that. Regardless if the reports are true or not, whether the Padres actually want to trade him, if you're the New York Mets, they're obviously going to field for the same reason Stearns probably was fielding or is going to field trade talks with other teams for Alonso is the same reason the Padres are probably going to do so for Soto, just to see what an offer might hold.
Yep.
If the Mets think they have what it takes to trade for Soto, you make a baseline offer. If the Yankees are thought to be the front runners, make the Yankees outbid you. If they really want to outbid you, make them offer up Volpe, make them offer up Dominguez. You have all the power in the world, not to just screw with the Yankees, because that would just be funny within itself. But like Dante was saying, a low ball type offer to beat out the Yankees is probably, it could get it done. If the Yankees are unwilling to go that next step and go into a bidding war with the Mets in this trade, you could sneak away with a steal of a deal here. I just think that it's making all the sense in the world with what Dante was saying. So shout out Dante. I want to give him credit for that. But
Yeah.
I firmly believe that regardless if the Padres are really going to be confident in terms of offering up Soto in a deal, they're going to be listening to offers, and the Mets could sneak away by default of the Giants, the Padres now wanting to trade in division, and the Yankees now wanting to go take that next step. That's all I'm saying. Let David Stearns do his magic. And like you were saying, Rob, did we know Francisco Lindor was going to come over to the Mets
No.
right before it happened? Did we know that we were going to trade for Brooks Raley? Did we know we were going to trade for XYZ? The Mets keep all these things in-house. There's very few leaks about what the Mets do. So that's why I'm not concerned with how quiet this offseason has been, because I really do think they're going to be active. And I have no doubt in my mind that David Stearns will work in the phones for Juan Soto. And everybody in the chat could disagree, respect your opinion, but I heavily believe the Mets could sneak away with Juan Soto by default of the other competitors just not being able to offer up as much, not willing to, and also just being out located, right? Like in division, being the trick of the division. So that's my piece on Juan Soto. I know we've been talking about him for 30 minutes now, but
Hey,
that's my take on him.
it's a big to get here.
Yeah, one thing if I could add to that, then that's a good point that Chris brings up. David Stern seems to be a very kind of, a little bit more quiet and a little bit more private with the front office stuff. I know during, I think his introduction press conference, when they were asking about, like the Pete Alonso extension and all that stuff, he said that a lot of this stuff is to be kept in private. And, he's kind of said it a lot of the, said it without saying it a lot of the times where, maybe he's not going to be like, the past, front office, Billy Epler in some sort. They seem to be a lot more private with that stuff. Like I said, a lot of the past big Mets trades have been very under the table, been very out of nowhere. No one expected Francisco Lindor, like everyone said. When Francisco Lindor and Carrasco got traded here, was it January of 2021? I don't think his name came up once before. Maybe on some beat reporters, but nothing crazy. So you really don't know what is going on in this Mets front office because it seems to be a little bit more private. And I think that's a good thing, at least my point of view. Look at Pete Alonso. He's in New York. Rob brought it up yesterday. He lives in Florida. Why is he in New York for the holidays? Could be a contract extension, Yeah. So it's the little stuff like that I think, it's going to be interesting. But overall, Stern seems to be a little bit more private. So, like I said, we really don't even know what could be going on. There could be some other person that could be potentially be talked about in trades, whether that's Chapman, whether that's Bregman, whoever.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And, I still want to give a shout out to Easy as well. Again, talking about the Giants. I didn't even think of that for a second. I just think, the Giants are so desperate. But the Yankees and the Mets always have to pay a premium, either in money or prospects, because people like to make the Yankees and the Mets pay a premium as a New York team. And the Giants, the only way the Padres are going to trade him to the Giants if they bid everybody tremendously. And, that's a great point. I honestly, it's between the Mets and the Yankees at that point now. I hardly think the Padres are going to trade him to the Giants. I mean, that's a great point. I didn't even think of that. Stupid me. And, it's a great point. And, to finish up on the Soto thing, I would be shocked if it doesn't happen. I would be shocked if it doesn't happen during the winter meetings. I think it's prime and ready for a Soto trade. Yamamoto's going to sign after the winter meetings, apparently. And I think Ohtani's going to sign during the winter meetings. And Soto's going to get traded during the winter meetings. That would be a lot going on during the winter meetings. It's about time. So let's get into the main topics. Besides that, even though Soto, we were supposed to have the stream yesterday. So a lot of this stuff just came up over the last, day or late last night into today. There's been talk about Alex Bregman being on the market. There's been talks about Matt Chapman being somewhat linked to the Mets. I don't necessarily think that, even though I put up a video, I find it hard to believe that. But again, David Stearns always cherishes defense and prioritizes defense. And Bregman and Chapman are two guys that, one's a signing with a qualifying offer and the other one is a trade. So I'm going to ask you guys, Nelson, I'm going to start with you about the Bregman situation, which I did a video 3 weeks ago on Bregman and I got killed for it. Literally killed for it. Why would the Astros trade Bregman? Well, they don't pay their stars. They pick one or two of them and then they trade the rest, or they let them go in free agency. So if it's a possibility, say if the Mets don't get Juan Soto, do you think they'll pivot to Chapman or Alex Bregman, because they're clearly not afraid of trading some prospects away to get the player they want. What do you think, Nelson?
I don't think Chapman's going to be coming here. I truly don't believe the Mets are going, unless it's Ohtani, the Mets are going to offer any contracts to anybody with a qualifying offer.
Okay.
There was only 7 dudes offered a qualifying offer. Nola, I think, was one of them. He already signed. Chapman's one. Ohtani's one. Snell is one. So I truly would be – I mean, Snell, I guess if they struck out on every starting pitcher and he was left, then I guess maybe if they got desperate, they would throw him a contract. But the problem with the Mets offering contracts to guys with qualifying offers is because they were in that competitive balance tax, they not only lose a 2nd-round pick, they lose a 5th-round pick, I believe, as well, and then $1 million worth of international free agent money, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually it's a pretty good chunk of money. Yeah. I don't see the Mets wanting to do that. Like I said, unless it's for like an Ohtani situation. So I don't think Chapman's gonna be coming here. Bregman I brought up as well weeks ago. Brought it up on X. I think I might have said it on a video too. I had similar pushback about why they would trade him and this and that. It's his contract year. Like you said, the Astros don't pay people. It would seem the Mets' initial goal is to go with the kids at their base, but that could change. Like, if we can't get our hands on a Soto, if we can't fill the DH role somewhere else, then maybe trading for a guy like Bregman to shore up that lineup is a way to go. I truly think almost anything is on the table. The Mets are going to just look at all their options. Yeah. What happens with Yamamoto is going to affect who else we target as pitching. What happens with Ohtani is going to affect what we do. What happened? It's a chain reaction. So who goes where and everything else, then that's going to kind of write our story as the offseason goes. Hopefully, if we're lucky, the baseball gods like us, we get Yamamoto. That's my first target no matter what. And then from there, if we can get a Soto, that'd be great. If we pivot to Bregman, I have no issue with that either. I really want even if he didn't have a qualifying offer, I want no part of Chapman. He started off hot and then fell off a cliff. Yeah, he's got a nice glove, but I don't think he's going to be worth whatever he gets paid. So, yeah, I mean, anything's on the table. I really think I know people are saying Stearns is sleeping on the job and this and that and the other. I don't truly believe that. I think the guy is working hard behind the scenes. Like Hayden said, Pete Alonso's in town. I mean, he could just be hanging out, but he could be negotiating a contract that we never know. So I don't know, man. I truly hope the dominoes start to fall soon because, yeah, even I'm getting a little impatient, but I think it's all going to be all right.
Yeah. I kind of that's a good point. With the qualifying offer with Chapman and Bregman again. The Juan Soto puts a kink in everything situation because if the Mets weren't in on Juan Soto and we never heard about the Mets being in on Juan Soto, I think Bregman could be more of a opportunity for the Mets as well. People like, well, how many more third basemen we need? Well, do we really have a third baseman? Because I don't consider Brett Baty to start in third baseman. I think that would be a bad idea if the Mets throw Brett Baty in third base to start the season. That just tells you that they struck out on a few people, in my opinion. I have you bring in Bregman, Mauricio can go to second, McNeil can go to left, and Brett Baty can be in a trade package if you're going to do that. So maybe part of the Bregman deal in situations like that. So no, Chris, what do you think? I think Nelson kind of debunked the Chapman situation with the qualifying offer, and he had a down year last year. Average was up, power was down. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the qualifying offer is a great point by Nelson. That's the exact reason why the Mets probably didn't even offer up a contract to Sonny Gray. Obviously, we saw him go to the Cardinals for 3 years, $75 million. He did get the qualifying offer from the Twins, but he didn't want to come to New York anyways. That's well documented. So I don't know why people were in such a big hoopla with what the Cardinals are doing over there, recreating the Mets rotation from 2023 2.0. But yeah, Alex Bregman, I mean, I would definitely love his bat. Another guy, I love my sample size. You hear me on this podcast, I always talk about sample size. Alex Bregman has the sample size to come to New York and be the true difference maker in a third base position that you said it yourself is lacking. It's between Ronnie Mauricio and Brett Beatty. Honestly, personally, I'd rather see Ronnie Mauricio at this point than Brett Beatty as the everyday starting third baseman, if that's what it came down to. Was listening to MLB Network. I'm not sure if it was today or previously, but JP Morosi was kind of asked about the chances of Bregman getting traded, and he basically stated that it wasn't likely, although we never know with these sort of discussions with what the Astros are really planning, a high turnover organization. Probably not as bad as the Rays in terms of the high turnover rate, but definitely up there in terms of not wanting to pay those big names. But he didn't make it seem like Bregman was likely, so I firmly believe the Mets will not land a third baseman. I firmly believe that. I really think they're going to leave it up to Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio. And like you said, Rob, probably not the smartest of decisions if you want to be the best ball club that you can possibly be and toss out the best team that you can. But give Ronnie Mauricio a shot. I like his bat. The strikeouts are high. We all know that. But his power, switch hitting abilities makes him versatile, to say the least. So, yeah, that's what I think about the third base position. I know that the Guardians are unlikely to trade Jose Ramirez. That organization is just absolutely in flux at all times. I have no idea what their 5-year plan is. I don't think that they have a plan. I was chatting with the Guardians fan on my timeline earlier today. Basically said that they're not going to trade Jose Ramirez, but they're not in any sort of position to contend in the next 5 years too. So the MLB, the owner for the Guardians is holding that fan base hostage just to boost the ticket sales. So the third base conversation is interesting. And like Nelson was saying, Yamamoto is the domino that has to fall on the starting pitching side. But what makes that so tricky is that he's probably going to be signing a little bit later, like you said, after the winter meeting. So that's going to take a little bit more time to develop. And are all those pitchers, Snell, everybody else on the list, are those pitchers going to wait until the Yamamoto deal falls, or are they going to just be paid, or they're not going to be patient and start to sign before Yamamoto signs? So I don't know. Maybe Yamamoto deal could pave the way for those pitchers, but they can get impatient. So the Mets really have to play that very carefully because they obviously have to fill in 3 rotation spots. And then the bat piece, the domino that has to fall is Juan Soto, right? Like you said, if the Mets weren't in on Juan Soto, they better be contacting the agents of all these other guys, your Solairs, all the other guys are on the market. Your Bregmans, like you said, you have to do your due diligence on Alex Bregman. If he's on the market, you got to go, swing a deal for him potentially. So the Mets need a bat. Like, we're not going to sit here and say that the Mets don't need a bat. What I truly believe, and Nelson, I'm going to give Nelson credit for this because we said it on the Interstate Mets when we were projecting our lineups. I will be A-okay if Juan Soto gets dealt elsewhere, the Mets can't get a deal done. You get Teoscar Hernandez here on a cheap deal. He had a down year last year, but I like Teoscar Hernandez's ability. He's not the best outfielder, but he has pop, and he would also be a nice little bat to put behind Pete Alonso, hopefully on a cheaper deal than what you'd have to pay Juan Soto an extension. So I know I'm going on a little rant here on third base and what the Mets are going to do offensively, but I don't see Alex Bregman being dealt ultimately, and I do think that the Mets are going to just roll with a combination of Beatty and Mauricio and see who wins that job. For lack of a better term, that's probably not the best option for the Mets moving forward, but they're kind of stuck there. They're not going to find a trade partner for Brett Beatty at this point. They're not going to sell low on him. You got to give the kid a shot. I know last year was his rookie season. I know he struggled. Maybe he can turn it around in New York. I don't personally think it's going to happen, but I'm not giving up on him at the same rate. You got to give him a fair shot. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and before I get to you, Hayden, somebody put it on chat. I forgot who said it, but saying that MLB, I'm assuming network, said that the Mets aren't going to sign anybody. Well, that's kind of hard to fill 12 roster spots on a 40-man and what about 3 or 4 or 5 spots on a 26-man roster. You can't make trades for all that. And we talked about that last offseason. The Mets had a lot of roster spots to fill. And you can't do that on all trades. You have to sign people. So for people who think the Mets aren't going to sign even 2 people, it's kind of hard to fill a roster. if you don't sign enough people. And again, remember, the Mets have $100 million coming off the payroll, around the $100 million coming off the rail. You know, people forget about Cano. You know, you get Escobar, you got geez, who the hell was the left fielder? Jesus Christ, I'm losing it right now. You got Eduardo Escobar out. You got Cano gone.
Canna.
Yeah, Canna. You got Canna. You got half our bullpen gone. You know, we got about, I think it's between $80 and $100 million, you know, depending on arbitration, but you're losing that much money off of the payroll. And again, the payroll is going to be around $300 million, if not above. Like, I don't, you know, people who thought that Steve Cohen was telling the truth to Scherzer's an idiot for believing it, because you can't fill a roster that's going to have that many openings without signing guys. So, yeah,
it's going to be around 350 million, Rob. It's going to be a lot more north than 300. I firmly believe that.
Even if it's not the big free agents, it's still going to, even, you know, $10-15 million here for 2 starters, or $25 million for another starter, $10 million for a couple of bullpen arms. That adds up. That's $100 million. That's already $100 million. So, and after you go past the $300 million mark, that, you know, 289, that's it. He's already at the top level of the tax. So, like, he's paying that ultimate tax anyway. So to go over, Cohen already said it. If he's going to go over, you know, $1 million and he's going to pay the same amount of tax, which is 50% of everything he has in his payroll, why not go over it more if you're already paying the amount you already are? So, Hayden, with that aspect with the Chapman Bregman situation that kind of aligns with the Juan Soto situation, what do you actually think when it comes to the Chapman and Bregman situation, if that's actually possible?
Yeah, I mean, first to say the fact that there was only 7 qualifying offers and all of them were rejected is kind of interesting to think about. I mean, obviously the only person that stayed with their team was Nola, and that was on a much bigger and better deal for him personally. When it comes down to it, Bregman, okay, we'll start off with this. Third base is still an unsolved issue. I think many people could say that. You look at Brett Beatty, and out of the 4 baby Mets, he's probably the person that I am least confident in. To make the argument, everyone else showed their potential, showed what their prospect report had potential of. You saw it out of Alvarez, you saw it out of Beatty, you saw it out of Vientos a little bit in September. What'd you see out of Brett Beatty? Bobbling the ball against the Phillies, the inability to hit the opposite way, nice little swinging and missing. Beatty, I would say right now, he isn't your starting third baseman unless he goes absolutely off in spring training and goes off. And when I say off, like insane, he's not your starting third baseman. And right now, you don't really have one, and that's still an issue. And I get it. I have no issue with Brett Beatty. I get it. Not everyone's going to be a stud on, Brett Beatty's not automatically going to be a stud year one. Not many guys are like that. Some guys are like that. But when it comes down to it, third base is still an unsolved issue. And right now, I would have no issue looking at a trade package and putting him in that. And what the future is what the future is. But right now, you're looking at the short-term perspective of the Mets window. A lot of people are talking about that. And, right now, Alex Bregman is a candidate that I would easily have no issue with. Look at him. He had a down year this year. He was hurt, arguably, for most of it. And he still put up adequate numbers, maybe a little bit more than adequate numbers. He's great protection in that lineup, playoff experience. He'll give you 20, 30 home runs. 270 sub average, 860, 70, 90 OPS. He'll give you 75, 80 RBIs. He's a great, you could probably argue he could be a table setter to an extent in this lineup, if not batting 5th or 6th, depending on what this lineup looks like. But, Bregman would be an interesting candidate. I would have no issue putting Beatty in a package for Bregman. Chapman, I would stay away with. Just how New York is. Chapman, strikeouts, and we saw how he was. He was great in the first half. He was great in the first quarter of the season and then went on a massive downfall. He's great defensively. That's cool, but unfortunately, there's more to defense than playing baseball. And, it's too much of a liability in the lineup. I would automatically see that Mets fans would have a heart attack with Chapman in August and September. So, yeah, right now I would probably easily go for a Bregman trade. I don't think the Guardians are going to trade J-Ram. That would be nice, J-Ram and Lindor, bring it back old school. But I don't really think that's – you never know what could happen. You know how we know things are – we saw Lindor. No one knew about that. So who knows? Things are possible with J-Ram. But Bregman is probably the most serious third baseman out there that could potentially be traded. Unless there's anyone else that I'm really failing to, think on or be cognizant of. But right now, I would say Alex Bregman would be a nice move for the Mets to trade for.
What if I know we talked about Juan Soto? What if the Padres pull a 180 and we saw those rumors last year about them potentially trading Machado, which gets money off the books, and then they go ahead and re-sign Juan Soto? That would be a complete 180. They go a completely different direction because Juan Soto's younger than Machado.
Yeah, that's a good point, by the way, because I was thinking about if they were so strong for money, why would they extend him knowing that he was going to opt out? I don't understand that situation. I mean, maybe they are looking, but you know what? I think a lot more teams are looking for outfielders than third basemen, and I think that's probably the reason why they're. And obviously, Soto has 1 year left on his deal, but I think the fact that there's more teams looking for the outfield help, like the Giants, the Yankees, the Mets. There's a ton of teams that need outfield help. There's not a lot of teams that need a third base help. I mean, it's kind of like a little bit extra, I guess, if with Machado. And I don't think people trust Machado. Even though he always has good numbers, he always looks like he's not trying. He has that Cano mentality where he doesn't look like he's trying, but always puts up good numbers. So I don't know. It's like, am I going to be mad if the Mets trade for Machado instead of Soto? I mean, I want Soto because he's younger, but I mean, it's hard.
I'll take Machado in here.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah,
Machado, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like in the Mets situation, yeah, they technically don't have, third base options that are, I guess good. I mean, I don't trust Beatty. Maybe Mauricio can be that guy. But again, and we were just talking about it a little bit. We didn't really get into the kids much, but we always talk about the core of the team, right? Everybody's like, oh, you got to play the kids. You got to play the kids. Nimmo, Alonso, McNeil were the kids. They weren't expected to be the core, or at least, Alonso was probably the only one. McNeil and Nimmo wasn't supposed to be a part of this core. That wasn't supposed to be the case. You got the core from your farm system. You brought up Alvarez, great. And if Mauricio is going to be a player as well, that's 5 guys out of 9 guys in your lineup. Like, how many more kids do you want? We're not the Baltimore Orioles. We're not the Tampa Bay Rays. They have to play the kids. The Mets don't have to. I think we lose that narrative that, we have to lose 100 games for 3 years straight and get draft picks and play the kids because the Orioles owner is a cheap bastard or the Rays can't afford anybody. That's why they got to play the kids. We lose that narrative in this situation. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, same thing. They have to play the kids. They weren't spending big money for a while. And I think that's where a lot of Met fans lose focus, is that we're so focused on playing all the kids. You can't fill spots with all these kids. Some of them have to be assets in trades as well. That championship teams make a decision of saying, all right, we got our core. We got a few young kids to help this roster right now. We have a few extra assets to make our Major League Baseball team better, right? We don't care how good our minor league system is. Do they win championships? Who gives a shit? Nobody should care. The fact of the matter is the New York Mets have to pick a certain amount of players, which they clearly already did. Beatty, Mauricio, Alvarez, and probably Vientos. Everybody else should, at least some of them, should be expendable because those are your assets. You don't hold them just to put them on your wall and say, look what we got, the number one, the top 5 farm system. It's good to a certain extent because you can't play them all. These guys are assets. And I think we all agree. I know me and Hayden went on for about a year when it came to prospect hugging. Hey, Hayden was a huge prospect hugger for a while. We used to go at it all the time. I mean, we had interesting conversations about it. And, he still likes those prospects, not giving away everything, but he sees what happened in 2022 when the Mets kind of half-assed the trade deadline and it burned them going into the dog days of summer into September. And then, they actually had a better 2023 deadline than in 2022. Yet the Mets are one of the best teams in baseball in 2022. You can't do that. Look what the Rangers did. They went for it. Yeah, they had to give up Acuna for a broken down Scherzer. But you know what? They took the risk, and it didn't really pay off with Scherzer, but it paid off with Montgomery. It paid off with other guys they brought in. And we forget that narrative that to be a championship team, you got to use some assets. You can't hold everybody, or you're going to end up like the New York Yankees, win 100 games and die in the playoffs because you're afraid to give up a Volpe for Luis Castillo when that pitcher you needed could have put you over the top. And they didn't. They didn't do it with Cole when he was traded to the Astros. They didn't do it with Verlander when he was traded to the Astros. And each time, who do they lose to? To the Astros. Who has the championship? The Astros. Sooner or later, guys, and anybody wants to chime in, I apologize for ranting here, but that has to be the case with the Mets. We got to stop, half-assing these off seasons and these deadlines because it's burning us every single year. And we talk about it after the season is over. Why didn't they do this? Why do they keep these prospects? What's the point? If you're not going to play them, freaking trade them for people that are proven. What do you think, guys? Anybody can jump in.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I'm not one to prospect hug. Like you just said, you got to go in and build the roster. The Mets have a lot of work to do, which is why, like I said, regardless of whatever route they take, they have, and I think Joe DeMayo on Twitter said it best, like, regardless of whether the Mets are going to take the expensive route or not this year, like they did last year, they have roster spots to fill. So they're going to make moves by default regardless. They have to. It's about which route they're going to take. And it could be a mixture of both. Go sign 2 top free agents and then go get the lower end guys for the rest. It doesn't really matter, but they're going to do something. So everybody should hold your horse on that. But that's why I'm stressing the importance of at least doing your due diligence on Juan Soto, because like we have the prospects and we got them for this position to at least make an offer and put ourselves in a better chance, quote unquote, to land a guy like Juan Soto. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But if you're not going to go and do your due diligence if you're David Stearns, then why'd you get the prospects in the first place? Because all those guys cannot see the field at the major league level at the same time. Like, it's not feasible. So go give him a call and make the offer. If the Yankees outbid you, congrats to them. They just gave up a guy that they surely didn't want to give up. But at the end of the day, these guys are all not going to see the field. There's 9 spots on the field, on the diamond. You're not going to have everyone there. And to think about 2026, 2027 MLB prospects, the farm system rotates. I understand it takes a little bit to build up the farm system, but with the likes of David Stearns now, they're getting player development guys in the building. They're getting new scouting department guys in the building. You would think that the draft pool and the Mets' drafts moving forward is going to get a little bit better, but that's my take on it. Like I said, you got to do your due diligence. And for the fans out there that want to keep XYZ prospect, at the end of the day, if you want a prospect hug, that's fine. Look where Beatty has ended up, and look where at this point Ronnie Mauricio has ended up, because we still don't know if he's going to be on this roster. I mean, I'm sure they're not going to trade him, but we don't know what we're getting out of Ronnie Mauricio. So it's not a surefire kind of thing. And like I said, Rob, I completely agree with you. And I will always take the stance that I am not going to prospect hug if a generational talent like Juan Soto is on the board. I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And we got to remember, people are just bringing up the Astros. I just talked about it. The teams like the Orioles. The Astros lost 100 games 3 years in a row. Their television network basically went bankrupt because nobody was watching. The Mets did that. To build a farm system takes 4 to 5 years. The Mets did that in basically a year to get a top 10 farm system, probably even top 6 or 7, depending on what the new outlooks look for the top farm systems in baseball. We have to remember that. The Mets did this within a year of getting major prospects and getting a top 10 farm system here. That's a huge deal. That takes time. And the Mets did that. So David Stearns comes into a top 10 farm system, and all this scouting directors and all the people he's bringing in, you can get rid of people if you trust the guys to draft the right people, no matter where you draft. Because the Astros, you talk about drafting well, the last couple of years, where were they drafting? They were drafting 28th, 29th, 30th. It's the right people to draft the right guys. You can always draft your farm system. I think we forget about that. You lose, say, 4 or 5 guys this offseason for a trade. You still got guys if you need somebody for the trade deadline. And you got a draft coming up. Draft well. you build your farm system back up. Hayden, Nelson, what do you think, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, listen, people have kept a lot of receipts. Rob knows, you've known me for 2.5 years, Rob. I'm a big prospect hugger. I value the farm system. I value drafting, from the MLB draft to the international draft. But, you look at the last couple years and you got to be aggressive. And I said this and I'm going to say it again. This deadline, everyone was upset what happened, but it was for a better future.
Yep.
The Mets getting all these prospects and Gilbert, and Clifford, and all the other guys, whatever, whoever. It was for they could keep some of them, and then other half to put in trades, and that's the purpose of it. You look at an ideal organization, and I really do idolize the Braves on how they've built their success. They've drafted through the MLB draft. They've drafted through the international draft. They got guys through free agency. They got guys through trade. And then they got guys homegrown. And, and that's what I think the Mets need to start doing. And, the more big name trades would be nice. And, you look at it, a lot of the Mets internal guys that you have right now, look at them. Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Brandon Nimmo. None of those guys were top tier prospects in the Mets organization. The only reason Pete Alonso was known, besides him being a Gator, but he was insane for power, and that's all he was known for. Nobody expected him to hit 53 home runs his rookie year. No one expected him to be a 40, 45 home run year guy. Nobody expected Brandon Nimmo to be a great OBP guy. Nobody expected Jeff McNeil to be the player he would be.
Yeah.
Who knows? Right now, we could be sitting in the Mets farm system. It could be some guy that no one knows about who's ranked 28th on our farm system that is the next one of those three. And who knows? It could be the same case for the good guys or the not so known guys. So, right now I agree. Look at Brett Beatty. I mean, if you would ask me a year, not saying Beatty's a bust, but if you were to tell me a year ago today, you would have put Beatty in a package that would have got someone really good in return. Probably would have said no. And you look at it now and that's why you got to be a little bit aggressive. But, you definitely want to have a good mix of, prospects, free agents, trades. So, yeah.
Yeah, Nelson, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, I mean, I hate to echo what everybody's saying, but it's pretty much true. Like, if it comes to a generational talent and Soto, in my belief, like a Luis Robert type, those are guys you can't hug prospects for. Like, no matter what they're at. I mean, there's a limit, of course, but reasonably, you need to be able to give up whatever it takes to get a deal like that done. My only counterpoint to trading away prospects at this point is they just went through all this trouble to build the system. And I don't think they're at that level yet where like the Dodgers were, where they can pull off a Mookie Betts trade, where they can pull off a trade for Max Scherzer and Trey Turner and still have a ton of prospect capital left. I think the Mets want to be at that level. I don't think they're there yet. So I think I could see a situation where Stearns looks at it as, you know what, I need to keep maybe not all these guys, but I need to keep a good chunk of these guys so that I can get to that point where I am like the Dodgers. I can make multiple trades for star players and still have a top 5 system in all of baseball. The Mets are getting there, but they're not there yet. Last season, the trade deadline, they made a great strides in that regard, but they're not quite there yet. They're going to need a few more drafts. They're going to need maybe a few more trades. Who knows? But they're getting there. They're close. But like I said, I mean, if it's a Soto, if it's a Robert, obviously you go all in. But you also got to think about, hey, if we do really want to be the Dodgers, we do want to be able to make these huge trades at deadlines and bring in studs like that and still have more prospects in the pipeline, then we need to still be careful and try to keep as many kids as possible.
Yeah, and Chris, I'm going to get to your comment that you put up there that I tend to agree with. The funny thing is, and Nelson, I tend to agree with you, but here's the problem. you have a core that, Alonso's going to be 29. You got Nimmo 30, Lindor 30. These are guys that have maybe 2-3 years of prime, their prime years left. 2-3 years, maybe 4. By the time these kids come up, if you're going to keep them and build them up, they might not be the same players anymore, and you're going through that cycle again. And all right, well, these guys aren't very good anymore. They're past their prime, and you pray that these prospects are going to be good, because that's what you're relying on. Not saying you're doing it 100%. And again, you said like with Soto or something like that, or Robert, or another big time trade at Bregman. You can do that, but like I said, I'm not saying trade them for a piece of crap. You know what I'm saying? I think you understand that. I mean, we all understand that. But yeah, I think that's the problem that the Mets put themselves in. They signed McNeil, they signed Lindor, they signed Nimmo, and it looks like they're probably going to sign Pete Alonso. Well, these guys in their prime right now, 3-4 year window with those guys. You pray that the Jet Williams, the Gilberts, the Cliffords, the Ramirez, a couple of our pitchers actually turn out. But at the end, if they don't turn out and your core gets older, you're back to square one, because now you pray these prospects that you're acquiring, that you're drafting, are going to be half of what these players are, if not the same or better. And, we're going to be through that cycle again. And to lose out on this core that you just gave a ton of money to, I think it's a scary game the Mets put themselves in. And maybe that's Billy Epler's fault, but maybe that was also Cohen telling everybody he wanted those guys to be back here long term. So I don't know. What do you guys think with that? Anybody can jump in if you want.
Realistically, what other option did they have? I mean, they could have not re-signed Brandon Nimmo. That was one option. But, I mean, Jeff McNeil looked like a bargain of a deal when it happened. It was 4 years, albeit the AAV wasn't terrible, right? I just don't see what other option they potentially had. So I agree with you, though. It is a scary game because, like you're saying, essentially the Mets are now playing the game of it's win now with this core and get the pieces around them that you have to trade these top prospects off for, or rely on these top prospects now, hope they pan out to help this core win now. But if they don't, you're screwed, and the core is going to get well anyway. So it really is just a revolving door of making sure Stearns and the talent department get this right. Like I said, we talked about this when David Stearns took over. This was the perfect storm for David Stearns to have all the options that he wanted to mess around with. But being one of the highest paid front office guys in the league, I believe it's second highest, he's also has his work cut off for him, because if he makes the wrong decisions, lets the wrong guy go and keeps the wrong guy, Mets fans are going to be on your ass, dude. If you let a guy like Luis Angel go and you keep the likes of Drew Gilbert, Luis Angel goes on to kill it, and Drew Gilbert ends up being a bum. That's not going to do anyone. That's not going to do any good. So, like, and that's not just those two examples. Like, this is plenty of prospects that you can kind of go and either let go or keep and retain, because the Mets have a plethora of infield options in the farm system that they're going to have to make a decision on. So, like I said, a great opportunity for David Stearns to see what he's got and the ability to show that he can make the right decisions. But only time will tell, and there's no guarantees in that.
Yeah, and Hayden had a go, so we'll see him next time. Yeah, and Joel put up a point that the MLB is a copycat league. Yeah, it's a copycat league to a certain extent. You can't look. The Mets and the Yankees can't do what Baltimore and the Diamondbacks do. Baltimore, this is the first time they made the playoffs in what, 9 years, 10 years, right? The Mets, even when they weren't making the playoffs every couple of years and they sucked, they were still having problems drafting and still having problems getting the right free agents in. Like, that's a problem. And again, the Diamondbacks, the same thing. I mean, come on, guys. Like, we have to pay attention to the situation. The Orioles lost 100 games how many years in a row? 90 games how many years in a row? The Diamondbacks, the same thing, right? The Rangers lost 100 games 2 years ago, and they spent money and made the right trades and put the right prospects up. And there wasn't many in the Rangers system. Like, let's be honest with the Texas Rangers. They spent a lot of money. It's not like they had like 4 or 5 core guys that, that they brought up and put, just sign Corey Seager and Simeon. No. You know, they didn't bring in Jacob deGrom because they had a plethora of pitching prospects. Evaldi, Montgomery, all those guys. Like, let's not act like the Mets need to emulate the Baltimore Orioles. Like, if that's the case, you want to go through 3 100-loss seasons? I don't think anybody's going to do that because guess what? Stearns will be gone if that happens. Everybody would be gone when this happens. You know what I'm saying, guys? What do you think?
Nelson, I'll let you go because I have a point here to make too, but I know you haven't spoken a little bit. So
No, I don't think the Mets are trying to tank to emulate teams like that per se. I think maybe the point there was just and try to emulate them in the fact that these aren't teams that are trading all their guys. These are teams that are holding on. Granted, they're different. They can't afford to sign players, so there's a difference there for sure. Stearns does have tons of options.
Yep.
But there is a world where I could see them I hate to call it a reset because I don't think they're going to tear it down and like tank, but there is a world where I could see them being very minimal in what they do this year because Ken Rosenthal made a good point today, and I think it was a podcast or something. Everything the Mets do right now, because of their payroll situation, they're paying double. And I know Steve Cohen's made of money, but at some point you would think the man wants to stop paying double for his payroll. Like anything he's going over the tax, yeah, it doesn't matter how much you go over the tax, but you're still basically paying double for every free agent and every move you make. So it's something to consider. Do I think he really cares? I truly don't, but it is a possibility, albeit I think a small one, that he could be like, you know what, this isn't the year. I don't want to go all in this year. I want to dial it back, try to reset that tax, and then next year I have more money to play with. The problem there is the next year's free agent market isn't that great.
Exactly.
terrible.
So there's that side of things. So it's just so much to consider. That's why he gets paid millions of dollars and we don't. I truly do think at the end of the day, we're gonna walk away going hard in the pitching market and maybe dialing it back in the hitting. I think we're gonna maybe play a lot more kids than maybe people would like to see. I do think we need a DH regardless, a Teoscar Hernandez or somebody of that ilk, or even if it's a trade. I think we need a DH. We can't roll the dice with Vientos and DJ Stewart. I don't think that's good enough. But yeah, I do think we're going to spend money on pitching. Who we end up with, who knows? Everybody wants Yamamoto. We know that.
Yep.
It's not like it's going to be easy. It's no guarantee he's taken. Obviously, Steve Cohen, if he wants, can outbid anyone for anybody. But especially with these Japanese guys, it's not always about money for these guys. Sometimes they do take a smaller deal for whatever reason to go somewhere else. So we'll see what happens. I really think like we need some of these dominoes to fall for things to start moving, because as long as Yamamoto's still out there, as long as Ohtani's still out there, I think teams are kind of holding back, and it's just creating a logjam right now. I do see us potentially being involved in the trade market for sure. If we could, I've seen McNeil's name. If we could trade McNeil, I've said it before, we could trade that guy for some pieces.
In the field. Hey, let's go. Let's go. I mean, who do they got? They got Sung-woo, right? Whatever his name is, the second baseman, the Korean guy, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
Let's go. We'll give you McNeil. Come
on. So yeah, I'm down to trade McNeil. In the right deal. I'm not looking to give him away. I do think he's a valuable piece. I think he's flexible. But if the right deal comes along, and I'm not holding on to McNeil for any reason. He has a contract that I think teams would like.
Yeah.
So I'm all in for making the move like that. There's tons of options, man. I'm desperate for some stuff to start going on, so we can just kind of get a sense of where this is actually going to go.
And you know what? That's another thing. That last point you made was a great point. when the first domino falls for the Mets, whatever, if it's signing Yamamoto, trading for Juan Soto, or signing a bullpen piece that nobody cares, it's gonna be a telltale sign of where the Mets are, I guess, going. Because if the Mets sign Yamamoto, say Yamamoto's going to be after the meeting. Say the Mets do trade for Juan Soto. Now you clearly see the Mets are probably going for it. If you said if they're going to tail it back a little bit and not make big signings and make mediocre moves, not mediocre moves, but like small moves, then why? If the rumors are true that the Mets are in on Juan Soto, that's why I think they're going. I think this is Cohen driving the ship right now, in a way that people believe that Stearns is running things, yes, but Soto trade scenario sounds like Cohen's plan 100%, in my opinion. So I don't. You might be right, but if the Soto rumors are true, and there's no reason why they think they're not true, considering the fact that the Mets popped up out of nowhere after a week or so. I don't know. It's kind of crazy to me because I see it as this: if the first move the Mets make, I think, is a telltale sign of what the Mets are going to be looking for or going to do this offseason. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, there's like I said, there's a couple of different ways they can approach it. I honestly don't know, to be honest with you. Who knows who's driving the ship now, whether Steve Cohen's taking a back seat or not. I can see where you're going with about, maybe Steve Cohen wanting Juan Soto and that being his decision. I don't know how that's playing out. Something I did want to bring up in the chat, I was actually going to bring it up, but JoJo and Kenny, shout out Kenny, tuning into the show, brought up about Rhys Hoskins could be a valuable low-cost option for the Mets at the DH spot. Will give you 25, 30 home runs proven, right behind Pete Alonso if you stick him in there. Teoscar can probably get you the same thing too, maybe on the cheaper side. So those are definitely valuable options. The pitching market, we all know, like Nelson said, like the roster's going to have to shake out somehow, but they can take the cheaper option. You got guys like Seth Lugo, probably not going to be that costly for the New York Mets to bring him back. Eduardo Rodriguez, if you want to get a premium pitcher, you sign Eduardo Rodriguez for like a 40-year, $90 million deal. That's only $22.5 million. Probably a fair shake for him. Not something that, Yamamoto is going to demand in seven and over $200 million, right? Yamamoto's looking at 30 plus M's a year for a guy who's never thrown an MLB pitch. Like, I get that he's a phenom in the Japanese league, but like, does that translate over? That's you can never fully tell, right? You got Shota Imanga, who's going to probably be getting a lesser of a deal, another lefty that we've not been talking about, but that's another probably cost-effective route the Mets can go, another crafty left-hander. So there's ways the Mets can still bring in these free agents and fill these roster spots while going more of the cost-effective route. Is anyone going to complain if we sign Erod and Imanga? I won't. I'm not going to lie. I won't. Like, that's probably not the sexiest move, right? The sexier move is going to sign Yamamoto and getting Erod. But if they don't want to spend like that, then you get Imanga and Erod. Or you go after Imanga, Seth Lugo, and whoever else. There's a whole plethora. I forgot who else is on the market, but there's a whole plethora of B-tier guys that the Mets can get. Now, I'm not saying that's the smartest decision because it probably won't translate to the most amount of wins and a playoff race. Well, Mets being in contention like we fully want and expect in 2024, but there's options on the table. The one point that I did want to make, though, about the whole sort of rotation of whether you want to emulate what the Baltimore Orioles are doing, whether it's feasible or not. You look at not only the World Series matchup this year and the Rangers and Diamondbacks, it was a story of two completely different paths to get to the World Series. One, homegrown young talent. The other, probably some homegrown talent, but definitely free agent signings and mega deals being given as well on the Rangers side. And then you look at the World Series winners from the past, I want to say 4 years. You got the Washington Nationals. That team was mostly homegrown. The 2020 Dodgers. On the flip side, you could call it a Mickey Mouse championship all you want. It's still a championship in the books. I think it's Mickey Mouse 100%, but they definitely were big spenders. The Braves, they had homegrown talent when they won in 2021, and in 2022, homegrown talent with the Houston Astros. And then you get to 2023, the Rangers are paying the big bucks to those guys. So, like I said, there really is no one size fits all. It's not like if you keep all these homegrown talent, you're gonna be on the road to victory. That's the exact way to do it. Or if you go pay these big prospects, these big free agents, you automatically make the World Series. It's a mixture of the best of both worlds. And that's exactly what the Mets are set up to do right now. They have the flexibility to take a happy medium of those two paths, which I think a lot of Mets fans are underrating the art and the beauty of that. And that's exactly what's going to make Stearns' job that much more difficult. So that's just a little nugget that I want to get off on a tangent on. But yeah, like I said, give me Teoscar, give me Reese. I'm happy with those guys being a DH. Or if they want to go the sexier route, go get Juan Soto. Flip side, sexy route, Yamamoto. If not, Imanga, call it a day. Like I said, any different way the Mets can go about this, I'll be happy. There are going to be moves, and there are moves to be made. So that's my take.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So we spent about a little more than an hour on all of this stuff. You know, we talked a little bit about, you know, the whole thing with Imanaga and Erod. I'll be fine with that. And, you know, and throwing, you know, Sevy on the back end with a low risk type of deal. It's not a bad rotation. You know, is it going to be, you know, top 5 rotation in baseball? No, but what top 5 rotation won the World Series? It wasn't the Rangers. They were pretty good, but they weren't great. You know, the better rotations in baseball, they didn't even get close in these playoffs. And you know, the Yankees had a Cy Young. Yankees had the best bullpen, and they didn't make the playoffs either. So you know, I think it comes down clutch moments. Get hot at the right time, and pray that the people that you signed or traded for, or the young kids, come in the biggest spots in the biggest moments. I think that's where you have to look at. So, Nelson, final thoughts, and we'll call it a night, and we'll go with Chris as well. Go ahead, Nelson.
No, final thoughts is I hope, man, stuff starts to move. I'm just tired of the complaining. Also, just want to see stuff happen so we have more to talk about. I think everybody's getting a little impatient, but I think some people are taking it overboard. Like it's like everybody, not every single person that signs is, oh my God, what are the Mets doing? Like, come on, really? Like, are we really crying about Sonny Gray and Kenta Maeda? Like, let's chill out a little bit. But other than that, it's great talking. A lot of good points made. I just want to win, man. I just want this team to be competitive. However they figure out how to do it, I'm all in for. And yeah, other than that, man, check out if you're watching and haven't subscribed, check out the channel. Amish Country Mets fan. I was out doing a video out in the snow today, so you can check that out. It's on my YouTube, it's on my Twitter as well, or X, whatever the hell you want to call it. I just can't with that name change. But anyways, good talking to you guys. Tune in to the Interstate Mets Report Friday. Me and Chris got that going on. Yeah, let's go Mets. Good to be with the fellas. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, Chris, final thoughts, buddy.
3 points. 1, mimicking what Nelson said. Number 1, mimicking what Nelson said. It's not the end of the world. The Mets didn't get Kyle Gibson. The Mets didn't get Lance Lynn. The Mets didn't get Sonny Gray. Not the end of the world. That's 1. 2, someone revoke Ryan Dempster's credentials on the MLB Network channel. If you saw the mock trade that he put up with the Braves potentially getting Dylan Cease and giving up Vaughn Grissom and some no-name prospect on the back end for Dylan Cease, you got to be kidding me, Ryan Dempster. I can do a better trade package than that, and I'm sitting here on YouTube doing this for free. Revoke his credentials. That's number 2. Number 3, subscribe to the channel at CPNY Sports. Check us out on Friday. Nelson, Interstate Mets Report, and I are going live. Time is TBD, but we'll figure that out. I just dropped a video today talking about the free agent starting pitching market this offseason, and also reiterating to all the fans out there that are panicking that the Mets haven't made any moves so far to stop panicking, because it's coming. Like we said on this podcast, the dominoes have to fall. Certain dominoes have to fall, and the Mets are being methodical. But you don't hear any leaks out of the Mets, and that's a great sign. So, with all that being said, it was a great show. Always awesome to be here on the Mets Hot Stove, the Mets Roundtable podcast. I appreciate the chat popping out. Everybody in the chat, I appreciate it. And as always, guys, let's go Mets. We'll continue to evaluate and reevaluate this offseason as we progress. and hopefully we get some more enticing, some more exciting news to talk about on this show moving forward. See you all. Let's go, Mets.
Can I jump in with a little bit of random breaking news?
I was going to bring it again, Nelson.
The Mets are expected to sign Vladdy Miguel Guerrero, the son of Vladimir and brother of Vladdy Jr. Expected to sign him during the 2024 IFA period that begins on January 15th. That's being reported by Mike Mayer. So that's interesting. I mean, you never know that these guys are going to be legit, but it's a good bloodline, that's for sure.
And he's a lefty. I'm looking at the video right now. He's a monster. He looks bigger than his brother, to be honest. Like, built and taller. So that's good for the Mets. International signing, always important. You don't worry about drafting a kid like that in college and pray that he works out. These are guys that run up the system rather quickly. So final thoughts, one word: Yama Soto. Mets.
There you go.
That's what I'm looking for. Yama Soto 2024. So with that said, guys, everybody have a great night. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Nelson, Chris, it's always a pleasure. Have a good night, guys. See you next time.
Let's go Mets.
See ya.
They're cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue. So hurry up and come on down. 'Cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stands.